What's up? It's Matt. We are back. Another expert roundup. We've got an author today. We've got Restaurant Strong. We've got Mr. Peter Lesar. And I'm fresh off my first shift of working at a restaurant. I'm all hopped up on Red Bull. We'll be back in a second. Peter, my man, tell us about you, where you're located, your background. Then we're going to dig into this awesome book that you wrote. Because the last time we talked, the book was still on paper, not printed. Now it's in my hand. Let's go from there.
Perfect. So first of all, everybody, let me just tell you that Matt took a risk on me before the book was even out. And that's just the sort of guy that he is. He takes risks on his customers. He takes risks in doing his America's Best Restaurant University. And I'm really just appreciative of everything you're doing for everybody, Matt. It's really special.
My wife, I take risks with my clothing choices also.
Yeah, well, I go for the plain color every time, and you go for the orange. We each have our look. So listen, my background is as follows. I live in Florida these days, but I've only been here about 2 years. I've lived all over the world most of my life, and I really got started in this business when a group of 5 of us put together a company that we eventually took public in 2008. And that company literally went from 5 people to almost 5,000 folks in the hospitality business with operations literally all over the globe. And what I learned in that endeavor was how darn hard the restaurant business is, right? And so I luckily had the good fortune of having total control over my time. And I spent a lot of time studying what I call our restaurant leaders, meaning the leading chains in the world and the leading independent restaurants in the world. And I tried to do an exercise, which is essentially, what does McDonald's and the French Laundry have in common? Or what does KFC and Noma have in common? And what does everybody between those brands have in common? And I spent a decade looking for the underlying principles of great success in our business that are the connective tissue for everybody who has gone the distance, right? Okay. And my expertise is really to take companies from ground zero to IPO. That's what I do. And so I wanted to understand what was happening in that development process across the board for restaurant businesses to rise up and become world-class companies, right? And the book is sort of the culmination of that in phase 1, and it's really a teaching guide for how restaurants can differentiate themselves, how restaurants can rise up and make a huge mark on the world and on their shareholders, on their employees, on their customers.
Okay. I love it. That's a lot of experience too. And I think one thing that I appreciate the most about it is just to go from 5 people to thousands. I've never led teams that much. I've never been involved with companies that big. I've went from 5 to 40, 50, 60. And it's a journey. But what I like about it is that you've probably seen so much stuff that it's scary. And the one thing that really perked my ears up when you said there was how you were able to kind of look at things. You weren't necessarily tied to any one specific thing. And I think that a lot of time that clouds our judgment, is that we're tied to certain things. I mean, that's one of the reasons that, this isn't about me today, but one of the reasons I started today working at Rapid Fired Pizza in Florence, Kentucky, a mile from our office, was I've been around the restaurant business for 20 something years. I've held about every position from a marketing and advertising standpoint. I've sat in restaurants for days and watched consumers and talked to managers. But I started thinking about it a couple weeks ago. I'm like, I've never physically waited on a customer, never sat, made a pizza. Like today, I cut pizzas. I folded the boxes. I got sauces, and it's interesting. I like that I'm able to step away from my business. I don't have an integral part every day that I can do these things. But let's dig into the book. It's Restaurant Strong. When did you start writing it? And what was the process like?
I'll tell you. So that sign behind you that we've talked about, deep work, which I know you're a deep believer in, is really what happened to me. And I spent a decade of my life going down a rabbit hole And the first thing that I tried to do was just look for tactics, because we're very tactical in this industry, right? And I was trying to look for tactics that people have in common. But of course, there really are very few tactics that any two restaurants have in common, let alone a French Laundry and a Burger King, right? And then I started looking at strategies, and there are some strategies that are common, but for the most part, not. And then I started to peel beyond the onion, not just the layers of the onion. I sort of went through the matrix, okay? And what I began to see was that there are principles or sort of underlying truths of what makes this business work at a higher level than most will ever be able to go if they don't understand what those truths are, right? And once you can start to see through that matrix and roadmap those truths out, it really gives you a huge competitive advantage. And so the first thing I did was I founded a restaurant on my own outside of a publicly traded company to test. And it went within 3 years to the 50 Best in Discovery Series. Wow. In a little town, in a far off place that nobody had ever thought of for food, became famous around the world because in part we used the principles that are now in this book, right? And
preached.
Well, I did what you're doing right now. I mean, you have all this huge knowledge, Matt, and you get so much appreciation for going in and cutting up a pizza because now you're seeing it from all these different angles that you already know, right? Yep. That's what was happening to you today, rather than you're a fresh young employee just trying to figure out how to use a pizza cutter, right? Yep. And so I had to do the same thing. I had to like take all this theoretical knowledge and put it to use in a practical way to see what would come out the other side, yep. Right?
That takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts because there's a lot of people, and I'm not going to pick on the scholars across this country, but yeah. I've taught a couple of classes at universities. I had a class 2 years ago that was mine that the professor overlooked that was a deep digital marketing for restaurants. And there's a lot of stuff in books and colleges that have never been used. There's a lot of tactical advice. It's like, have you done this? Well, no.
Yeah, there's a real breakdown. And what happens, Matt, and you spend, I don't know, probably, I'm going to guess 80% of your time on this. What happens is that restaurants are in a knowledge race. We are, whether we are a restaurant owner, we're a chef, we are serving tables, we're all trying to learn more than our competitors in order to be able to accomplish more than our competitors and rise up in the world, right? And what everybody here needs to understand is that the most valuable knowledge is not knowledge that we can't actually see. It's below the visible surface of how we actually do things, right? Okay. And so I spent a lot of time, I know, Matt, you spent a lot of time just trying to explain to people why things work the way they work, right? And so part of this book is to roadmap out things that I want you to understand, right? But part of it is also to gift people the process that they can go through to keep doing that work themselves, right? To always dig below the surface to see the connective tissue, what makes a strategy work and what makes a strategy not work.
Yeah, and the tough part I had to accept I'll say as a young adult. I'm 45, so I'm still quite young.
Still young.
But what I had to learn is I was fortunate from my early 20s to my mid 30s to have a pretty good, I was an entrepreneur right out of college. I got to work in corporate America, but also own a small business with my dad and brother. And we started it from scratch and grew it to 15 million. And I made a bunch of money, and I was an arrogant little prick at some point there, but I had a pretty deep knowledge. Like my expertise now, I'll tell this to anybody. There ain't a person in this country, restaurant marketing can touch me. And what's funny is I have a sign on my desk that a buddy of mine wrote for me like 6 years ago. It says, I know Matt Plapp. And this expert said, hey, this is the problem with every business. Is not everybody knows you. And if they don't know you and appreciate you, they don't care what the hell you say. And so you can have all this theoretical knowledge, or you can have this expertise or this skill set, and you can tell somebody that desperately needs it. But if your name doesn't mean anything to them, it doesn't matter. And like I see it when I speak, when I go to a trade show, a restaurant show. I've had a booth at Pizza Expo, at the NRA show. When I have a booth, I'm just a booth. When I'm on stage and somebody hears me talking and goes, oh, That's what he's talking about. And you get off the stage, you would think you're like Michael Jordan. And so I think that's one thing too, that like in the book that I liked is there's all these little tidbits, but I think books in this manner, people have to appreciate how freaking hard, like I've written 3 books and it's hard to write a book. It's hard to write a book this thick. Like your book makes mine look like I was like, using crayons. Like it's in depth. There's a lot of factual stuff in here. And I think that's one of the cool things for me is that if I'm a restaurateur and I look at this, like you walk through examples and then you give facts and then you walk through, here's how to use it.
Lots of case studies to bring it practical. But Matt, I want to take something just so that we can go practical for everybody. I want to take something you just said that was absolutely critically important. And I want to teach a principle if we can do that. Okay. Yeah, sure. So Matt just said, people have got to be able to know you, right? And there's a difference between being in a booth and being on a trade show, for example, right? On the stage, right? Yeah. What he's really talking about is visibility, right? And so restaurateurs or anybody who works in this business will know that the more people can see their sign, the better that is, right? But they don't really think what underlies that tactic, right? What is below that tactic of having a sign that people can see? Well, it's this underlying truth that the more visible you are, the more people will recall you in their minds, right?
Yep.
And the more revenue you will generate as a result because you are more top of mind than everybody else, right? So Matt getting up on stage made him more visible, not just because the stage is higher up, not just because there weren't very many people standing around him, but because everybody's eyes were pointing at him, right? Yep. All those are visibility. And so how does that translate into restaurants? It can translate literally in 1,000 ways. But if you wake up every day thinking about how do I make this place more visible by being a thought leader like Matt is, right? Figuring out what you are expert at that you can talk about in your local community or in your market. Rising your sign up on a pole sign makes it more visible because it elevates it out of the street, right? Having your facade be markedly different than everybody else's, like McDonald's is or like Taco Bell's is.
Yep.
That makes them very visible. The reason they are not even located in strip malls, but out on the street in the parking lot of strip malls often, right, is to be front and center, more visible, right? Everything that you do that is customer facing, you want to put visibility front and center and think, how do I make this more visible, right? And the more you do that, it will snowball. The more people will remember you, keep you top of mind, and go in, right? That's why we see, the famous Chick-fil-A billboards on highways, right? Because they are funny, that makes them more visible. They're 3-dimensional, that makes them more visible, right? They're breaking the patterns that everybody else used in billboards, and that breaking of the pattern made them more visible, right? Every single thing they did around marketing was to increase their visibility. Got it? Even their point of view, not being open on Sundays, promoting Christian principles within their business, increased their visibility because it riled up all sorts of people, right?
And more than anything, too, it excited their actual avatar, the people who believe in the same thing.
Oh, totally. And it excited them, and it made other people scared or nervous or upset for whatever reason.
Yep.
And that controversy elevated their visibility even more. Visibility, right? So controversy is visibility, humor is about visibility. Everything that you do can be about increasing your visibility, and it snowballs.
And it cracks me up because, I want to get to the first topic after this because you must be like reading my mind on a daily basis because what we preach in my business is we have an acronym ABR, America's Best Restaurants: attract, build, retain. Right. If you attract the attention of consumers over and over and over, they will eat more food. If you've got XYZ Steakhouse and Matt Plapp sees your steakhouse 50 times this year, but next year sees it 5,000. Well, it doesn't take a rocket science to know that if your food's awesome, your service is awesome, and I like going there, I'm going to eat your steak more often. Well, what we talk to a lot of clients about and we talk about is that everybody has they have to know everything's working. I'm like, well, if you can build a database, what we preach around the attention, and then consistently retain attention. Like quit sending crappy emails. Like I've got a text series right now on my phone from Dickie's Barbecue that I quit deleting. I haven't it for the last year, but I just started not deleting it. I've got 2 weeks for every other day they send me a text message about eating barbecue. And I'm like, that's why people opt out. Like they don't want that crap every 2 days. But I love what you're saying there. I want to dig into it. I actually got the pattern breaking as one of the insights we're going to talk about in a second. But in the book, what I like is that, and when you buy, not if you buy the book, when you buy the book. So go, where's the best place to buy it? I buy all my books on Amazon. Is there another place?
You buy it on Amazon, you buy it at Barnes and Nobles. You can go to any bookstore. If they don't have it, you can ask them at the front desk to order it for you, and they'll have it in their system.
So buy the book, leave a review, and digest it. But in here, it's got different case studies, and it's got insights, and it's got tangible things. Like I love that, because I guarantee every book I've read, I've never seen like the insights done like this. Those are the things you circle for me. Like I go in there like, oh my God, that's gold. And I'm like, oh crap, it's already highlighted. I don't have to circle it. It's there. So one of the first ones that got my attention is insight number 42. And it's the first sentence of it was, restaurants don't serve food as their primary business. Talk about that.
Wow. That's a great one. So if I were to ask anybody in this audience of yours how they would define a restaurant, right? What is the definition of a restaurant? And what people will say almost universally, even throughout our industry, is, well, it's a venue where people come in and they order food and we serve them food and drinks, right? But that is the definition that tells you sort of what to do, but it doesn't tell you actually how to outperform and how definition that doesn't actually teach us what we should be doing, right? And so I'm here to declare for the world, okay, whether everybody wants to believe me or not, that you are not in the business primarily of serving food and beverage. That is what you do to solve customer needs, okay? And you are actually a solution provider. And whether you're McDonald's, and that's a clear case we'll cover in a second, or you're the French Laundry or Per Se or Next, right? Or anybody in between, they're all solution providers solving very specific human needs, and I identify all the needs that different types of restaurants and different formats of restaurants solve in the book, so that you can then innovate solutions to solve those needs better than anybody else that you directly compete with, right?
What I like about that, interrupt real quick, what I like about that is people, I was telling somebody this the other day, I'm like, consumers can easily make their own damn food. I mean, it's not hard to make food. So you got to wonder, okay, why are they choosing to not make a peanut butter sandwich and come eat your pizza? Why are they driving by 5 other pizza places to come eat your pizza? Or why are they driving by your pizza place to go to that?
Exactly right. Why? Yeah. That's the question. And the more that you keep asking why on top of why on top of why until you drive into those 5 whys, what you're going to find is that the customers that are showing up, if you do your job of really trying to understand why they're showing up, are coming for very specific needs. So the obvious case, a fast food restaurant in general, but not in all cases, is serving a physiological need. I'm hungry now and I have to eat quickly and keep moving, right? Physiological need, right? Very basic. But Chick-fil-A came along and said, well, I'm going to serve that physiological need, right? But I'm also going to serve love and belonging, which is another human need, right? And exactly as Matt said, there's this avatar of type of person that originally loved Chick-fil-A because of its Christian values, right? And their sense of belonging to that business, right? And so love and belonging can be a need that has many different ways of interpreting it. But in that particular case, it was all about building tribe. I wanted to affiliate with somebody who believed in the same things that I believe in, right?
And I think a lot of restaurants fail to understand you can't affiliate with everybody, because like Chick-fil-A, for example, I guarantee you probably 30 to 40% of the people that are in a drive-thru right now somewhere do not have the same belief mechanism as the family of Chick-fil-A. but it doesn't piss them off enough to not eat awesome food.
That's right.
And so it's, like when I worked in radio, the radio station WLW in Cincinnati, Daryl Parks, for the program director, always had a cardboard cutout on the wall. And it said, hey, when Bill Cunningham or Mike McConnell or Jim Scott walked in the studio, they had to walk in his office, look at that cutout, and read who they were talking to. Because if you talk to this person, you're going to attract people really close to this person, but you're also going to piss off the complete opposite, which helps radio because they listen and we make more money when they listen. Exactly. Well, I think from the Chick-fil-A world, I think what's cool about it is a lot of us have these stories where, we hear something about Nike, like how they're making shoes in China and this happens. And I'm like, screw Nike. And then a day later, I buy a new pair of Air Force Ones. Like our memory is short on things. Yeah. So there's probably a decent number of people that hear these Chick-fil-A controversies, or like the In-N-Out one they're dealing with in San Francisco right now, that are like, screw In-N-Out while they're eating a burger.
Oh, absolutely. And so underlying what all those different restaurants do to attract customers, and the reason customers keep coming back even after they get pissed off, is because in one way or another, they're solving a human need better than anybody else does, right? And that's why we can't disconnect from them, okay? So I'm going to give you guys one example, because let's just go the other extreme from fast food, and let's say any destination fine dining restaurant that you've ever been into the world, the in a Little Washington, or Blue Hill at Stone Farm, or whatever restaurant that you guys have heard of or you've been to and you love, right? Why do you go there, right? Well, it's the same reason you go to a museum, perhaps, right? Or you just study a foreign language just for fun before you do a vacation. There are higher level human needs on this hierarchy of human needs that Maslow originally worked on many decades ago, and they've been fine-tuned over time, that are about self-actualization, right? I want to be the best version of myself, right? And when you go to a museum or you want to learn something new, it's really because you want exposure to new ideas. You want your brain to grow and be more open, right? And when you go to a place like Noma, right, you are going to Noma in part because you want to experience where food is going in the world, and where values around food is going in the world, and who is leading in those values, and what sort of language do they use when they describe what they're doing for you, right? And it helps us to self-actualize, to become better as humans, right? If we were just hungry, we would have gone to the McDonald's down the street, okay? Yeah. And there's another human need that's served by the Nomas of the world, which is esteem, right? We are social animals, and we want other people to know where we are in the pecking order. It's a terrible truth about humans, but even those that recognize that they are benefiting from some social currency will still do it, right? So when I went to the French Laundry, I put it on social media, and I wanted people to know that I had arrived. I could go to the French Laundry, right? And that seems very shallow, but that's who we are, okay? Right. And so those sorts of restaurants cater to these higher level needs. And the point, Matt, for your viewers is, if you don't understand the need that you are serving, then you are at risk of never actually rising to the potential that you have, because you're not actually working on being the best solution provider around that need, okay? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And it's ironic. I just had this conversation last night. I'm on the way back from Louisville. We're down there shooting one of our shows, and I get a call from an owner of a brewery. And he was referred to me by a current client. He said, hey, I want to talk to you about some things. And he's talking, and I won't give you the whole story, but long story short, they are the only African-American owned brewery in Cincinnati. And they have an African-American brewer, the only one in the whole city. And they're in a predominantly African-American community that's not the best of places in the town in Cincinnati. And he's talking about their marketing and everything they've done. I'm like, so let me get this right from what you've just told me. In the last couple of years, you guys have never marketed to the people that would relate to an African-American brewer, because every other brewer in Cincinnati, let's be honest, it's a white dude with a beard.
Right. Exactly.
And there's certain populations that's not their place. They don't go hang out with the dudes in skinny jeans and, the $300 shoes.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that if you do.
Yeah. And I'm like talking to him, and I'm thinking, I said, man, your guy's biggest advantage, your biggest opportunity, your biggest story, you haven't even touched. He's like, I agree. And so we're going to talk next week about it, because I think that's what you just hit on there, is that. And I think another point that I want to point out that I think you talked about, and it cracks me up. You talk about Chick-fil-A. You know, in my area where I'm at now, there's 2 Chick-fil-A's within 3 or 4 miles, and there's a Raising Cane's up here. And this ties back also to another example. There's one of the mega churches near us called Crossroads. About 10 years ago, this Crossroads opens up on Mall Road, about a mile from my office here. And also at the time, about 2 miles from my house. And it was on my running path. Well, the street I lived off of was called Hopeful Church Road. And there's like 5 churches on it. Yeah. And so when I would go run my path, I had this 6 to 8 mile run that I would do. And it was like 2 mile, 4 mile, 6 mile. And I would pass churches every mile and a half. And I would always kind of crack. I'm not a church going guy. I'm not anti-religion. I just have never been involved in churches. And I would always kind of just wonder, when I would jog by Sunday mornings by these churches over a 2 to 3 hour period, and none of them ever had anybody in the parking lots. I'm like, who goes to these churches? Like half of them are empty. And then this one's got 10 cars. This one's got 50. Well, then Crossroads opens up. 10,000 people went to that church the first weekend and still go every weekend. And I'm like, okay, what is wrong with the churches around here that you're missing these 10,000 people? And I bring that up because it's the same thing. When Raising Cane's opened up here, there's a Guthrie's Chicken 2 miles away. How come Raising Cane's opened up to fanfare, dudes camping out for some freaking chicken tenders and french fries, and they haven't even went to Guthrie's? Like, what have you missed in the culture and the marketing and the avatar of your product that you don't have that excitement when these people apparently are there? They just aren't stopping by your place. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a great example. So there is this great human need to belong to something, right? And there's this great human need to follow others that belong to something, or to have them follow us, right? And we really do feel a sense of connection with the volumes of people, right? That's why crowded restaurants attract more people, even though that wouldn't make any sense. It's crowded, I'm going to have to wait, right?
It's what's going on.
I go over there, it's empty, I could eat right now, right? That's a clear definition of, we're not just there for food. We are there for a sense of belonging to the collective, right? And the energy that we feel from that, which we can all recognize right away, but it's actually this energy of belonging to this group of interesting, weird, whatever sort of community is where you feel inserted into in the moment, right? And some restaurants are really good at gathering large communities, just like some churches are, and some are like those empty churches, right? And they're there questioning, why is my service not so performing so well tactically? What sort of strategy in my little church can I do to try to? And the other guy, right, the mega churches are saying, well, how do we actually get people to connect? And that's what great restaurants do, is they think at that level.
And I think all this too, we'll go on to the next topic, but all this too circles back to why some restaurants can't find employees right now. I told somebody the other day, I said, you're talking about you can't find employees. I know plenty of restaurants that can't quit getting people to come work for them. I said, the reason is they've created a place people want to be. They've got employees that leave there and go home and do not say, this place sucks, I hate my work, my boss is a jackass. They go home and say, man, the place is hopping, I love it, we have fun. And their friends go, oh, I want to go there. So I think it's kind of the same kind of stuff. So
it's very similar. And what people really need to understand is understanding needs is not just about understanding the needs of your customers, but the needs of employees, right? And there's a whole section in the book on dissecting what the true needs of all your employees are so that you can retain them better, right? But one key one that we all need to understand is most of us can find a way to pay a little bit more to be competitive with the pay scale of others. It might take money out of our pocket if we do it, but you know what? We can raise those rates, right? But very few of us can give somebody a career path along which they can develop themselves and self-actualize themselves, right, in life. And unfortunately, that requires a business to be able to continually grow and expand and scale so that they can offer employees a route forward, right? The reason Chipotle just announced record revenues was because they're about the best around at giving people career paths, right? So they get employees in who are the talented, hardworking, hard-charging, hard-learning employees that they know that if they do this, they're going to go there. If they do this, they're going to go there, right? And if you as a restaurant don't have a plan or a business model in place that helps you to keep growing and scaling, you're already predetermining your outcomes and your problems with your employees over time, right? Because you are not gifting them what they deserve, which is a career path, your stepping stone.
Yeah, that person looks at it and goes, okay, so let me get this right. I'm going to be at the drive-through for the next 12 years until I'm 54. Right. Yeah,
that's it.
So next, insight number 73, page 176. And I might know I've got different thought process on this as far as like where I think I would take this, but you're talking about something else. But one thing that just caught my mind when I was looking at it was that most restaurants don't choose to specialize. And that could go a lot of different ways. Like, my business, I'm at heart a marketing and media company. We could be working with car dealers, chiropractors. I've got friends of mine in my company 7, 8 years ago we had 40 different industries we served. We decided 2015 to go exclusively restaurants because it allowed us to harness an expertise and get deeper knowledge in what we did. And I crack up at some restaurants when I go to a restaurant, they're like, oh, we do this and this. Oh, we got a steak on the menu. I'm like, the same guy that's making that fajita burrito is also making a steak. Like, it's not going to be a good steak. So talk about what you mean with regards to specialization.
Yeah. So I want to start with expertise, okay? Because it's something that informs specialization, right? There's a restaurant in France that was a steak serving restaurant, as Matt has just alluded to steak. And at one point, they decided they were going to go and become a vegan restaurant, right? And they became a world famous vegan restaurant, even though they were already a world famous steak restaurant. And and it's about the biggest jump you could possibly do in our business, right? And what led that change, was that the chef and owner decided to spend a huge amount of his time learning about all these new agricultural practices that could infuse vegetables with a lot more flavor, And so he started serving food that, even though it was largely vegetable based, had unusual levels of flavor, right? So when you specialize in serving a specific need or serving a specific type of product, right, it's your level of underlying expertise that allows you to keep deepening that specialization way beyond the rest of the market over time, right? And so, again, going to Matt's wall, it really says it all. It's the deep work, right? And there, in every single need and every single truth and every single product and every single type of service, trust me, there are 10 layers more to go. And what happens is that most of us won't go beyond layer 1 or 2. That's the reality. And we make a little bit of money and we're just sort of satisfied with that. But what I tell restaurants, because my specialization is to take restaurants all the way to public company. That's what I do, right? Yeah. And what I tell them is, hey, if getting to that scale was 100, you're at a 2 right now, Doesn't mean we can't speed through a bunch of these knowledge steps, right? But you have to understand that what you think you know is actually only a small layer of what you need to know to be able to get to that level, right? And so we really need to be deep learners by doing the deep work. If that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. It's helped me a lot because what happened with our business was at our peak, we had, I think the number I always put out that I remember looking back a long time ago is we had 34 clients from 31 industries. And we
Right.
were good at what we did. We were 90% better than any of our clients at doing what we did from a standpoint of gaining customer attention, acquiring customer data, and then building relationships digitally with them, email, text, all that good stuff. But I remember when I would leave, and this is when it hit hard with me. I'm actually having dinner tonight at a place called Hofbrauhaus Newport. When I would leave Jeff Weiler Automotive, as their expert, and go to the chiropractic company next, and then go to GNC, and then go to a gym, and then go to a restaurant, nothing transferred. And I could never get deep enough because I was spending my bandwidth talking to 30 different industries.
Absolutely.
2015, when I started looking at the clients we had the most success with, it was 4 Hofbrauhauses at that time, and 3 Quaker Steak and Lubes. It was because that the knowledge transferred, and every place I went, I could recycle what we did and get smarter and get deeper and get those. Now here we are now. I mean, we deal with hundreds of restaurants a month on the exact same skill set, and we get deeper knowledge. And I think restaurants too. I told a guy this recently. I was just looking at his menu, and I'm like, dude, I'm not a menu engineer. I'm not a restaurant genius. I won't tell you something I don't know, but I can tell you something I do know, is that kid back there is not capable of becoming an expert and specialist in this depth of menu. Like, you can't have wontons up to sushi, down to burritos, and then over to a fajita. And then all of a sudden, you got corn dogs. I mean, you gotta spec, and it also hurts your marketing, because then people get confused of who you are and like what you're serving on.
Yeah, that's true. So in the beginning, by going broad, you were stealing your best opportunity from yourself. Right. And that's what so many restaurants do. Where I would caveat that is, let's just take what we might call a community restaurant, right? A restaurant in a small town in America that serves 3 meals and has a pretty broad menu, and they can specialize not so much in the food, but in that need of being at the heart of community, right? As their core specialization. And the more that you peel back that onion layer to find ways to be at the heart of the community and be a hub for the community, right? Then people are going to pile in, even if you have somewhat of a diversified menu, because you felt that was important to be at the heart of a diverse community. Does that make sense?
Oh, I like it. Yes. So what you're talking about is there's different specializations. Like you might be, there's 5 or 6, there's many different things you could specialize in, like you're saying, from an entertainment standpoint, from a food standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, from an atmosphere, music. You might be the place that's known for the bringing in the hippest urban, DJs in the city, and that's what you specialize in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you were doing that, right, then you have to say, well, what is the underlying need of bringing in all those hit DJs, right? And you might say, actually, I serve the need for escapism.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. And now how can I help everybody escape on a Sunday morning, right? Or on a Tuesday afternoon, not just when I can have DJs in here. How do I be that escapist environment? Because that's a human need we all have, is to get out of our daily grind, right? And restaurant groups that are figuring out how to serve escapism are building billion-dollar opportunities. If they specialize in it and they develop the underlying expertise to deliver it in a number of different ways so that they can fill up their occupancy at all different times, right?
No, I love it. That's I escape all the time. I think me and my wife escape to a Mexican restaurant down the street for alone time and having a good conversation and get away from life. And when I'm having a bad day, I escape to Penn Station up the street for a Mountain Dew, some fries that are terrible for me, and a giant steak hoagie. When I have a good day, I go there also. Let's fast forward to number 83, page 214. The reason I like to reference these is because hopefully when people are eventually watching this and they have the book in hand, they can relate to them. But, insight number 83, pattern breaking products. Man, it's a tough topic because I think sometimes you can be too damn pattern breaking that people just don't get it. You can be like they call Red Sea, Red Ocean, Blue Ocean. Talk about what you dig into there with pattern breaking products for restaurants.
Yeah. So at the heart of this book and of these principles that have really powered the results of everybody in this industry that has grown up and that we all admire, is this idea of differentiation that we all. But and we hear these sorts of phrases all through our lives. A road less traveled, for example, might be one thing that we've heard 1,000 times, right? But the question is, how do we actually do that? How do we actually become different, or how do we actually travel down that road, right? And this book shows you how to do that on a business model basis. It shows you how to do it on a need and solution basis. It shows you how to do it in terms of the way you recruit, right? But there's one really important aspect that Matt is honed in on, and that is, why do you think that Taco Bell does 9 product launches a year, and why does everyone sound crazy? Right? Because they are trying to break patterns, and in order to break patterns, what's the first thing that we need to do? We need to be able to see the patterns, right? And so we are biologically programmed from our deep evolution to be on the lookout for things that are different and dangerous, or give us opportunities to consume or reproduce or whatever, right? And we are, therefore, because our minds can only be on so many things at the same time, our minds are biologically programmed to ignore the patterns that we have already sort of been formed in our geography, right? And so the ancient example is, you're walking in grasslands every day, you're no longer going to see that grass because it's just part of the pattern. And in today's example, whether you're in Kentucky or you're in Florida or California or wherever, I don't see the strip malls anymore, right? Because they are the grasslands of today on major thoroughfares. That's why we all get so excited when we go into cute little downtown, because it breaks the pattern of our lives, right? And on products, if you really want to turn a product into something that can become a $100,000 product or $1 million product or whatever your scale is, right? The first thing you need to do is you need to look at the products that your competitors offer and that you offer, and you need to look for how they're all the same. And then you need to pick one where everybody has something that's pretty similar, and you need to identify how they're similar, the patterns, and then you need to look for the opposite, or as near opposite as you can possibly find, okay? And so when you do that, right, and this can be, by the way, in ingredients, it could be in plating, it can be in bringing together weird stuff, it can be in naming, the double animal burger, right, the Baconator, right? It could definitely be in naming, or it can be in all of them together.
Have you ever seen the Naked Cowboy, the street entertainer?
Yes, I've seen him live in New York.
He's from Cincinnati, apparently. And I remember, like, when you're saying this, it kind of clicks to me, because there's all these people trying to make a name for themselves in the street entertainment world. They're all doing the same thing. This dude just said, you know what? I'm going to wear my underwear and a cowboy hat and boots, and I have a good physique.
World renowned.
And now he's world renowned. He's the same. If you had all his clothes on, he's the same as 100 other street performers. But because I remember back in the day, Party at the Park in Cincinnati with Q102 did Down the River. That's when he got to start. I remember seeing him early on, like, why is this guy allowed to stand in his underwear? Like, I remember seeing, like, Grant, you got good abs. You're stacked, brother. Like, is he allowed to stand in his underwear? Like, here he is now all over the damn world.
Yeah. So what, that's so important. So what is really important about that example is, he's located in Times Square. You know how many people showed up in Times Square because that guy was there? It was bait to get people to come to Times Square. And that's the point of finding patterns and then finding the pattern breaks, because the pattern breaks are the bait to get new customers to see you.
Okay. So let's say I'm a mom and pop pizza shop. I just came from a pizza place today, working at Rapid Fire. Let's say I'm Basilio's Pizza in Faribault, Minnesota, and I've got my normal pizzas, my hoagies, my drinks. Like, what could be something that they could do? Yeah, just break that pattern.
So first, I would start with a day part, right? What part of the day am I looking to break a pattern in, or for what market am I looking to break a pattern in, right? Okay. Or you can even say what product if you want to. But I would define the area that you want to break a pattern in first, okay? And then I would actually look at exactly what you're doing in pizza, and I would look at what your competitors are doing in pizza, and I would write down the similarities. You literally write them down, and there's an exercise for this in the book, okay? Yeah. But you literally would say, okay, we're all doing, I don't know, round pizzas, right? And we're all using X type of cheese, and we're all using this ingredient and that ingredient. Well, then you need to ask yourself, what is something that is so opposite and so silly and stupid, right, that I would be embarrassed to even go there, because that's your starting point, right? And so you could start writing that list down. You can say, well, I could do a square pizza. Okay, but that's not really a pattern break. Or I could do a pizza that doesn't have cheese on it. But, so then you have to go through that exercise, right? Yeah. And of course, there's that New York restaurant that said, well, actually, when I really look at delivery, I'm seeing we're all delivering pizza in cardboard pizza boxes. I'm going to make a pizza box out of pizza crust, right?
Never seen that one.
Yeah, the newspapers all over the world, right? Jeez. They invented a pizza box out of pizza crust. It was edible. Okay,
you eat the damn box.
You could eat the damn box, Matt. Yeah, that's right. And so sometimes you won't find that easy pattern break, and that means you actually just you have to keep going deeper, right? Yeah. That's the only way. I think an example that you're aware of and that I'm aware of is Papa John's looked at their day part business and said everybody who's serving day part in the pizza is serving calzones, right? That's what people eat. They don't eat pizza as much at lunch, but they'll eat calzones. And our competitors are serving Subway sandwiches of sorts, right? In the same price point. So what do we do different, right? And they brought together the idea of a Subway sandwich with a calzone, and they came up with papadillas, which are pizza bread, closed-faced, but with sandwich-style materials inside, like meatballs and barbecue and that sort of stuff. It's been a huge hit, right? So if you are not willing to do the deep work, which is the phrase of the day, okay, and think and make your brain hurt to find those innovations, right, by finding the patterns and then finding the pattern breaks, you're stealing away your best opportunities to change your financial outcomes for your entire life. That's how important this stuff is. And you're just accepting the status quo.
And it's funny you say that, because the book Deep Work by Cal Newport talks about the fact that the reason a lot of entrepreneurs, and even his books, a lot of it's about authors. Like authors have, like, you're writing novels and stuff. You got to go sit somewhere for 4, 8, 10, 12 hours, months at a time to get it done. Well, a lot of entrepreneurs are too busy in the kitchen. A lot of restaurateurs do not take that time away. That's one of the reasons we created this office space, Deep Workspace, is to try and get restaurateurs to get out of your 4 walls, come spend 4 or 5 hours here and think. Get off your damn cell phone, quit texting, quit emailing.
Critical.
We all think we're the greatest multitaskers. 20 tabs open on our computer, our phone going, our email, our iPad, our iWatch now. It's like my wife bought me one of those a while back. I took it back the next day. I said, Christy, my computer make noises, my phones make noise, my iPad. I don't need my damn wrist making a noise. Yeah. But I think that the minute you get deep, you sit down, you spend 3 or 4 hours, when you think about it, it goes there. You reminded me of a product Rex St. John has at Dairy Dream in Indiana. He's got Mountain Dew. He's got cotton candy Mountain Dew. Nobody else has it. And he's like, Matt, people come here at $4 a pop, something like that, 400 people a week. This is their coffee. It's Mountain Dew and cotton candy syrup mixed. It's a pattern break. It's not Mountain Dew.
Total pattern break.
And I'll tell you what, it's unbelievable, bro.
And I guarantee you, and Matt, you probably know this, that guy spent a lot of time figuring that out.
Actually, he actually got one of his employees did it. He caught his employees constantly mixing stuff.
Okay.
And like just playing around, screwing around during downtime. And he saw it and tasted it and was like, wow. And then it takes the guts sometimes, though, to really, okay, this is different. Now I can't do it. It's kind of like us, like our business, America's Best Restaurants. we have a van. We have 2 vans now, one out west, one right today in Cincinnati. But Idaho today, Cincinnati today, they're visiting restaurants in person. People in our business do Zoom. They call people, they cold call, like, you know what, screw that. We're driving to your place in a $150,000 Mercedes van with a camera crew. We're going to come in and talk to you.
Perfect.
And you've got to break pattern in order to stand out. And sometimes it takes a
Absolutely.
lot of balls to do it. And sometimes it's scary. And you think, oh my gosh, what did I had way too much Red Bull. That idea shouldn't happen.
Well, actually, so what I find is that many restaurateurs feel a little bit of shame around silly ideas, right? And that's a common trait. And actually, the sillier and the stupider, the better, because within that there's some DNA that you can work with that can give it meaning at the same time, right? And I just want to refer back to Matt's studio and his sort of thinking studio for a moment, because one analogy that I want everybody to have in their head is you're either water or ice in any given moment. You cannot be both. Your brain cannot be both this and that in one moment, right? And those are both long-term states. So you either need to be in a research and thinking mode or in a marketing mode, but you can't be in an operating mode, a research thinking mode, and a marketing mode at the same time and have a hope and a prayer of making it to the big time. Okay? That division of your time, as Matt has set up for you, is absolutely effing critical. Excuse my language. Okay? Whether you have access to a studio or you're far away, you need to duplicate that. Okay? And it takes hours. Find hours in a row for marketing, hours in a row for thinking, and
uninterrupted hours.
Uninterrupted hours. Exactly. Right.
I'll tell you what's killed us the most in deep work. The book taught me this, and it's funny, is this device right here. Like tonight or tomorrow, my son's got football. That won't go to the game with me. When I go to dinner tomorrow night with my family, it won't go to the game with me. There's like Sunday, I try and get it dead by Saturday night, and it's not even on all Sunday. And I've had 2 major breakthroughs on my business this year. The one of them I bring up all the time was in Gatlinburg. My daughter Paige and her boyfriend Mason, for a couple hours, were doing this like outdoor climbing park, and my wife and son brought their phones, and I don't bring my phone.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there, and part of you is like, what am I going to do? My hands, like, I got to have something to do. I just sat there and watched them. And Cal Newport in the book talks about becoming comfortable with your boredom. We used to stand in line at a restaurant and wait. Now we're on our phone. We used to pull up to a red light and wait. Now we're on our phone. We've taken away those moments where we were thinking, and we're filling it with BS from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And granted, I sell all this crap. Like, we try to get consumers to do it. But if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to learn to elevate. That's the big thing for me. I've had 2 like earth-shattering things happen this year in business that'll take our company, 9 figures or more than they were. Because I was sitting there in absolute boredom for 3 hours watching my kids on a climbing.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's where the hard work gets done.
Yep.
Right. And it's not possible with all the stimulation of everything else that wants to get in your head. Right. And that's what they're doing, by the way. They are, marketing people are creating noise in your head so that you will pay attention to them, right? Because if they don't create the noise, you're not going to pay attention to them. And what happens is it's a very competitive game that Matt's in, right? And the noisier, the more that you're going to get hurt. And so all these marketers that are buying for your time, whether you're trying to sell sneakers or movie tickets, are progressively getting more aggressive and noisier so that they can be heard above the crowd, right? And you got to shut that noise off.
Yep. Especially if you're going to be what you and I are, what a lot of our restaurateurs, the people we love to see succeed, need to be. A lot of them, I can't tell you the number of people I talk to that are, I think, pretty astute entrepreneurs. And I talk about what is a book you're reading? I don't read. Like, what do you mean you don't read? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, you should be waking up every morning and spending an hour to 2 on you and reading and thinking and chill. Like this morning, I got up and spent 20 minutes in my hot tub doing nothing. Phone wasn't near me. I just sat there at whatever it was, like 6 o'clock in the morning, and just kind of thinking, like, what am I doing today? What am I working on? And I think
so Matt, you've given me an incredible lead into something that I wanted to mention, and I'd like to invite you to participate.
Not if people go, hot tub, is it?
Yeah, no. In some other life, perhaps, but not in this one. So if people go to my homepage, which is www.peterlesar.com,
on the screen,
towards the bottom, there's a link which says Restaurant Strong Book Club. Okay? This is the first restaurant book club, I believe, in the history of book clubs. Okay? And the idea is we are reading books together of all sorts of different authors that help us to go deep into the underlying principles of what makes for great business, what makes for great hiring practices. But we're looking at deep principles, right? And so, and we're inviting the authors in. And so, for example, I have on my desk this book called Wanting, okay, the Power of Mimetic Desire in Everyday Life by Luke Burgess. Luke is a world famous author, okay? He's coming in to review his book with restaurants, okay, with restaurant professionals, restaurant owners, anybody in the industry, okay? And we're going to do 4 to 6 of these books a year, and the idea is to give us all the time to keep learning with our peers and to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and as much as possible have access to the authors themselves so they can help us to translate what they are researching and writing about to our own experiences so we can elevate our thinking. Right. Yeah, so I definitely would invite you to join in, Matt. Yeah. So if you go to that page and you scan down, there's that good looking guy there in the background. You keep going down a little bit more. There's my book. Okay, stop. A little bit above. Right there. So learn for free from other authors and thought leaders. Join the Restaurant Strong Book Club.
What? This is gold.
This is golden. And Matt, I would love for you to personally be involved. It's free for everybody. I want everybody in the world to understand there's no sales pitch at the end of the day. There are no services you're going to be offered. There's nothing but public service to help us all to keep learning deep.
I love it. I didn't know this was here. How did I miss this? And it's got donuts on it. Like that's even like, how did I not on donuts?
Yeah.
That is great. No, I love it.
Yeah. That's just my book video there. But anyways, Matt, I'd love to see you on there. We're going to be reviewing Luke's book in mid-January. So there are links that people will get to buy it. And it's going to be a really valuable event. So I'd love to have your participation.
Oh, hell yeah. I'd love to. I appreciate you bringing that up, and I appreciate you being on today. I mean, I know it's valuable time, but I appreciate you pulling away from your day and coming to talk to us here. And hopefully,
I love talking to you. You know that.
Tell me if I get my wife to love talking to me now. That's the next step. Maybe I should bring her on the podcast.
Well, you better get her on. Let me have a conversation with her. Then you can do the same for my wife.
Well, cool. Well, the book, get online, get it. Go to your local bookstore, get on Amazon, leave a review, buy the book, take some notes, put some things in place. Peter, appreciate your time today. Hope you have an amazing weekend.
Thanks, my friend.
Thanks,
really
sir.
Impressive work you're doing. Look forward to watching your journey.
I appreciate it. Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Be safe. Take care. Bye-bye.